Hello beautiful people, it's Steph here if you don't already know, and on this channel I just talk about all things careers and all things lifestyle. And in today's video, in response to a request on my Instagram page, so please do make sure that you give me a follow on Instagram too, I am going to be talking about some of the expectations that I think there are in terms of being a second year trainee. And I think the question specifically asks, what's the difference in expectations between when you're a first year trainee and when you're a second year trainee? So I'm going to try and go into that from a bit of a balanced perspective, looking at some of the positive expectations, some of the negative ones too. But I do hope that you like this type of content. Please do make sure that you like, comment and subscribe, and let's get straight into the video. So I think straight away, one of the first things for me that I thought about when I saw this question was, and this is going to sound so like, I don't know, pragmatic, I guess, but you get an increase in salary when you're a second year trainee, right? And I think this is pretty standard across the board in the legal industry. I don't know, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure pretty much all second year trainees get an increase in salary of some amount. So for me, I'm just like, if they paying me more money, they definitely expecting more from me. And that's not something that anyone tells you, but that was just me kind of thinking like, you know, surely. Like, it's the same as when you get a promotion, right? Normally when you get a promotion, it's because you're expected to take on more responsibility. Yes, you get paid more, but you do more. So I think it's kind of the same thing. So that was the first thing that I kind of personally felt like, and I knew that was coming because I've always kind of known that, you know, as a second year trainee, I was going to be paid more. Cool. I think in terms of what I've actually seen, and one kind of disclaimer I want to say here is that I deliberately waited until I was like 6-7 weeks into my third seat before I made this video. And I say this because I think I actually received this question at the end of my second seat. So I hadn't even started my third seat yet, but I just kind of felt like it would be good to, you know, live as a second year trainee a little bit before I come and give you my little 2 pence or 2 cents on what I think here. So a couple of the things that I've seen, which haven't actually necessarily been too far unexpected, if I'm being honest, but I think one of the first things is that there's an expectation that you have been learning across the course of your TC, which I think is a very fair and valid expectation, right? So what do I mean by that? I think generally whenever you move to a new department, you kind of have your general questions that associates and partners are going to ask you. And it's the same as when you're in uni, right? And you're meeting someone new and everyone always asks the same question, like, what are you studying? What do you do for A-levels or whatever? It's the same kind of thing. So when you move to a new team, people are always going to check, what seat are you in, first and foremost? So I'll obviously always be like, I'm in my third seat. And then they'll be like, oh, what were your first 2 seats in then? Or what were your previous seats in? So then I would say, you know, my first seat was in debt finance. My second seat was in capital markets. Cool. Now, aside from the fact that obviously people are asking because it's a nice thing to ask and it's nice to make small talk and all that kind of stuff, people also then kind of have an idea of what kind of things you should have learnt across your training contract so far, and therefore what kind of things you should be able to do without hand-holding, and what kind of things you can still be asked to do because you're competent enough to do it, but maybe you're going to have some more questions on it or whatever because you just haven't come across it before, right? And a perfect example for me currently in private equity is signings. I have done so many signings in this seat so far, but I personally think it's because when I, you know, went through this introduction, like I said, where I would say, you know, I did debt finance, I did capital markets. Anyone who has done a banking seat before knows that you do like 2 signings a week. Like I can sign in my sleep. It's ridiculous. So because there was that understanding that, okay, Steph has been in a seat where she has done this particular thing, and also I then also went to open my big mouth and say I like to be organized, which is true. I do like to be organized, but one of the key skills that you need to do to be able to run a signing without too much, you know, high blood pressure is organization. So you now kind of find that a lot of associates tend to come to me when they have a signing and be like, Steph, are you free? Like, are you able to do this? Which is fine. I don't personally mind. So I think that's one of the big like differences or expectations I found, because in my second seat, even though people knew that I had come from a debt finance seat, no one necessarily expected me to like run things like a signing by myself. I was still kind of very much just assisting, and obviously if I said I wanted to run it by myself, people would have left me to do that, obviously with supervision because I'm not a qualified lawyer, but there was never an expectation in my second seat that I had to do that. Whereas in my third seat now, it's kind of like, yeah, you've been doing signings for a year, sis, get to it kind of thing. So I think that's the first thing that I noticed. I think the second thing I noticed is in relation to how you handle mistakes. And I think this one is really, really key because I think as applicants in particular, there's this need to be a perfectionist, which I think I understand from different people for different reasons, which I won't get into for the purposes of this video, but generally speaking, it's really important to just put out there that everyone makes mistakes at every single stage of their career, in all honesty, regardless of the industry. But if we're keeping it to law in particular, trainees make mistakes, associates make mistakes, partners make mistakes, counsel makes mistakes, like everybody makes mistakes, right? But it's the way you handle them that is kind of a reflection of how far you have come and how far you are going in your career. So in my first and second seat, or actually, in fact, this is even a great time to do story time. I remember my first seat, I made a mistake, which honestly I was, the kind of mistake that I made, yeah? I was panicking, scared, shooketh. Cool. As I had made this mistake, obviously the supervisor that was like supervising the deal was in CC, but it's a thing where like they get so many emails in a day, especially if they're on so many other matters, that I don't think she had actually seen that mistake yet. And I was jabbering her at the same time, trying to ask her sly questions around the mistake. Instead of me to just tell her, look, I've done this thing and I realize that it's a mistake, I need to fix it, what should I do? I'm here trying to ask her sly questions around the mistake. Why? Because in my head, I was like, oh, I want to fix the mistake because I'm the one that made it. Wrong. What I should have done, especially because of the gravity of the type of mistake it was, what I should have done was immediately flag to her, this is what has happened. I'm trying to fix it. Is there anything that you think I should do? The reason why I'm saying that that would have been important in that case is because that kind of mistake was, it was very time sensitive. Like it needed to be rectified pretty quickly. And obviously the associate, and when the associate eventually figured out what the mistake was, the associate told me literally within 30 seconds what to do, and I was able to fix it within 30 seconds. But it's like, if I had been dealing with that by myself, I literally would have spent like half an hour, maybe an hour trying to fix that mistake. So you can see the difference in kind of time. Fast forward now to my third seat, I didn't really make a mistake in this one, in all fairness, but something just went wrong. And the thing that went wrong was that I was filing NMO1 forms at Companies House. I did it online and the forms got rejected. But the reason why the forms were rejected is because under UK law, there's this principle that you can't change your name. Oh, maybe I should rewind so that you know what I'm talking about. But NMO1 forms are forms that are filed at Companies House when you are changing the name of a UK company. So yeah, one of the rules is that you can't change the name of a company to a name that's already on the register. So I guess to make this example a little bit clearer, what I was basically trying to do was have company A change their name to company B and company B change their name to company A, right? But you can't do that because when company A says they want to change their name to company B, on the Companies House end, they're kind of like, okay, but company B already exists in the register, so we can't allow that name change, and vice versa. Cool. So they've now sent this rejection, and this is not as much of a time sensitive issue, I guess. So I kind of used like literally 10-15 minutes. I didn't spend that long at all because I know it's important to inform your supervisor pretty much straight away when something like when an issue pops up. But I literally spent like 10-15 minutes just looking on practical law first to quickly see, okay, if this is the issue, how can we rectify this issue? And I found out that there are actually two ways to rectify the issue. So one of the ways was doing something called a temporary name change. So instead of trying to change company A to company B, change company A to company C. Then once company A's name is free, change company B to company A. And then once company B's name is free, change the original company A to company B, right? But A, that takes long. And B, you need to have, so when you are doing these name changes, you've got board minutes and a written resolution which allows for these name changes. The board minutes and written resolutions that we have did not allow for these temporary name changes, right? They only allowed for the change of company A to company B, not the whole ABC thing that I just went through. Cool. The second thing that you could try to do to fix this was do something called a same day name swap. And in order to do this, you need to do a hard filing, i.e. post all these documents to Companies House. You need to send a cover letter, basically just explaining that, look, both companies have in their written resolutions, which we also attach to this letter. So we send the written resolutions, have said that they want to change their names to each other's names. So they basically want to do a same day name swap. You send the fee for a same day name swap and you send the written NMO1 form that you've kind of printed out. Fine. So then I quickly emailed the associate to just be like, look, this has happened. It's been rejected, but I had a quick check on POC. We can go ahead and do this. Do you want me to go ahead and do this? Or is there something else that you think is a bit better for us to do? Fine. The difference that I want to draw upon in the way that I dealt with those two, I guess, issues, I'm going to say, in my first seat and in my third seat, was that in my first seat, I was literally just panicking. Like, I don't even know where I was. I don't even think I was looking on Westlaw or PLC or anything like that when the particular issue happened. I was just Googling. And honestly, it was getting to nowhere. Like, I wasn't finding the answers that I needed. Whereas in my third seat, I had a very level head on. I was like, okay, this is the issue. I'm going to go look on a reputable website and see if I can find the answer. If within, and I gave myself a deadline, if within 15 minutes you can't find an answer, you're going to email the associate regardless, that kind of thing. And I think for me, it was because in my head, I felt like there was an expectation that I would know how to handle the issue in a little bit more of a structured way, I would say, a bit better than when you're in your first year or in your first seat. So I think there was that. But, you know, I'm happy with the way I handled it. The associate was happy with the way I handled it. So all good on that side, right? Cool. I think the third kind of expectation that I've seen, and this one isn't really to do with work products, but I more just gather it from the questions that I tend to get from people. So you know how I said in the beginning, when you move to a new team, you tend to get the A, what seat are you in? And then B, what were your previous seats? Another question you tend to get, or at least I have been getting, when people find out that I'm in my third seat is, oh, so what are you thinking about for qualification? And honestly, this one, I don't think I was as prepared for this question, mainly just because, like, qualification has obviously been on my mind, but it's been in the back of my mind. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I've not really been thinking about qualification like that. But there has definitely been this, you know, increase in questions. Like, I don't think I can think of an associate who has heard that I'm in my third seat and hasn't asked me about qualification, put it that way. So I think there is definitely a sense of, okay, you're in your second year now. Obviously, you're going to continue to do good work and, you know, do good work products and all that kind of stuff. But you need to start thinking about the end, because the end is in sight. The finish line is, you know, just at the other end of the road. Like, where do you want to finish up? Where do you want to end? So I think that's been a pretty interesting dynamic for me, because I've now had to start kind of going back and thinking to myself, what work did I actually enjoy the most? Which team did I enjoy the most? What do I see in terms of the future of each of the teams that I've worked in? And do I like where that future might be going? All that kind of stuff. Do I want to apply to other firms? Like, all those kind of things are things that I've now had to think about a lot more, if I'm being honest. And I think that when you move into your second year of your training contract, you will have to think about that a lot more, regardless of the fact that your qualification process actually starts in your fourth seat. You start to think about it in your third seat, if that makes sense. So I think that's the third thing I've kind of realized. The fourth kind of, I don't even really want to call this one an expectation, I guess, but a fourth thing that I've realized, which is a positive, I think, when you first get into your training contract and when you're in your first seat, you'll often be given advice, which is like, you know, say yes to everything, which I have my views on whether I think that's a good piece of advice or not. But the reason why you're told to say yes to everything is because you want to have a varied TC, right? You want to do different types of work to figure out whether you like all of the different types of deals that you're likely going to be working on if you qualify into that team. So I understand that, and I think that's great. When you're in your third seat, at least from my personal experience, I feel no type of way about saying, actually, I'm working on X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and therefore I'm at capacity and I can't say yes to this thing. And I don't feel a way about it. And I feel like in my first seat, I didn't really have the confidence to do that. If I felt like I was at capacity, I didn't necessarily feel like I had the confidence to say, actually, maybe I'm doing a little bit too much. And B, I also didn't actually really know when I was at capacity. I think that was actually probably the most important thing. Whereas now, as a second year and in my third seat, like, even though I've not done any private equity work prior to sitting in this seat, I'm much more able to kind of like foresee and be like, okay, if they've put me on these two deals and based off of the kickoff call we had when they said X, Y, Z, I'm probably going to be having to do X, Y, Z. And if it's going to be closing around this time, I'm probably going to be busy on this week. Actually, I don't think I have capacity to take up this DD or whatever else the other thing might be. Do you get what I mean? Or, and I have done this before, to be fair, I'll be like, oh, I won't have complete capacity to be able to do it, but if we can find another trainee to help as well, and there's two of us, then maybe we can make it work, that kind of thing. So that has actually been quite nice. And people don't push back on things like that. Do you get what I mean? And in all fairness, I think if I had said this in my first seat or in my first year, I don't think people would have pushed back on it, in all fairness. But like I said, I just didn't actually know how to say it. It's only now that I feel like I have the confidence to say it and I actually understand what my capacity levels are like. So I'm able to communicate that to people. So yeah, that's been a pretty nice thing, if I'm being honest. Like, it's nice to not feel like you have to be working all the time because you said yes to everything. And obviously once you commit, you kind of feel like you have to see it through, right? You don't want to commit to something and then when it gets to crunch time kind of be like, oh, actually I can't manage it. So do you know what I mean? So that's been quite nice. I think the final thing I've noticed in terms of, again, I wouldn't necessarily call this one an expectation, but yeah, just based off of the questions that I received from my supervisor and from like associates that I met when I joined the team, was that because you've been there for a year now, like been at the firm for a year now, you have an understanding of how certain things work, and you are going to take a little bit more control over the direction of your career, or over the direction of your next 6 months at the very least. And what I mean by this is that literally for me, like as soon as I joined the team, one of the first questions I was asked by pretty much everyone was, what type of work do you want to do? As if to say, like, you kind of pick. Obviously, this is going to make it sound like I just pick all the deals I do. I don't. Obviously, if help is needed and I have capacity, I help. But the point is, if I kind of make it known that, oh, I really like infrastructure work, or I really like Africa work, or I really like this, I really like that, and people know this because I've said it, people then keep me in mind when those kind of deals come in, and maybe come to me first, especially if someone else has said they like something else, so they'll go to them first for something else. Do you get what I mean? So that has actually been really nice as well. Like there's been more of a, this is my career, so let's kind of work together to make sure that I explain to you what I want and you help me because you've kind of been in my shoes 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever. So that's been really, really cool. But yeah, I hope that gives you an understanding as to A, what my third seat is going like so far, but B, what I feel like some of the different expectations have been from being a first year trainee to being a second year trainee. I think that was a really, really cool question. So big up those of you who asked me. I actually got it from 2 people now that I'm remembering, but big up those of you who asked me that question. If you like this type of content, please do make sure that you like, comment and subscribe. Do give me a follow on my Instagram, and I'll be back again soon with another video.